Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
Commissioner Huntash. Commissioner Husnick.
Here.
Commissioner Finneman. Commissioner Lorge.
Here.
Commissioner Erickson.
Here.
President Bain.
Here. We have a quorum. Ask all of those that are able to please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Members of the EDA, we have an agenda before you. I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
I'll second. Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Agenda approved. Our first item of official business tonight is the approval of the January 13th meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I move we approve.
Second.
There's a motion. Is there in a second? Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Next item is the approval of the January 27th workshop minutes. I'll entertain any changes or a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Members of the EDA, we have a presentation this evening from Washington County for the Open to Business. Dan, do you want to do a quick introduction, perhaps?
This is Tyler, and I apologize. I have a hard time pronouncing your last name. Hilsebeck from Open to Business. One of the reasons why I invited him here tonight was we've discussed this program, Open to Business, at multiple EDA meetings, but I kind of felt it was best to get the information on the program directly from Tyler here. So he's invited. He said he has about a 20-minute presentation, 15, 20 minutes. There'll be opportunity afterwards to answer, for the EDA to ask questions of Tyler. Again, this is more for the EDA's awareness, so if we go out into the local business community and we hear of somebody needing services that Tyler's program offers, we can kind of make that connection between the businesses and Tyler's programming. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tyler.
While Tyler's getting up, also just acknowledgement of Commissioner Marin, who's in the audience. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, President, and thank you all for having me here. As Dan said, I'm going to just kind of give a background of the program, kind of who we are, what we do, how we work in the community, how we've worked in Forest Lake, and then kind of open it up to questions and answers. If you have any pressing questions or anything, just stop me. I won't be offended. Just getting started, the Open to Business program is a program of the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers. We are a 501c3 out of Minneapolis. We've been doing small business work for 30 years. In fact, this year, we celebrated our 30-year anniversary. And so at the beginning of the program, what we were doing is we were helping small businesses that were underserved in the community. We were finding that there were a lot of resources for larger businesses and even mid-sized businesses, but for genuine startup and early stage businesses, there weren't that many resources. And so that's the work that we started to do in Minneapolis 30 years ago. And we found that as we moved on and kind of grew the program, there were suburban areas that saw what we were doing and wanted to access those resources too. So in 2011, we took the moniker Open to Business and made it a separate program of what we do and started contracting with the counties around the Twin Cities. And so that's kind of where we are today. So we opened the Washington County Open to Business program in July of 2017 in partnership with the CDA. And really the program doesn't work without the support of our county commissioners. So I just wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Miron for the support that he's shown us, because really this program really does not work without that support. So we're very appreciative of that. We've been working here for 2.5 years now, and just running down kind of what we do, we do two main things. One is business coaching and one is lending to small businesses. So I'll start with business coaching. So what we do is we meet with entrepreneurs on a one-on-one basis. So, we're really connected face-to-face with the client. We meet them where they are, and we meet with them, and we figure out kind of where they are, where they're stuck, where they need to grow, and how we can be a resource to them. And that can be a variety of ways, which I'll go through later. The business, it doesn't need to be startup. It doesn't need to be it can be any stage of the business. Out of the businesses that I've seen so far, it's been pretty evenly split between your kind of startup company and a company that's existing that has a challenge or opportunity that they need to work through. And so what we do is we offer them a very objective, kind of unfiltered third-party view of what their business is. What we found is a lot of businesses will get kind of feedback from people close to them that might not be giving them the full, kind of story of what they think of their business. And so you want to be nice to the people around you. So what we are is we look at it and we say kind of brass tacks what we think is the best way to kind of attack your problem and grow your business. The types of assistance that should be in the folder that you got range from pretty much anything. We help entrepreneurs write business plans, get their financial projections together. One of the main things we do is cash flow management. We think that that's probably the number one thing of what small businesses struggle with, is understanding their cash flows, their ins and outs, not necessarily just their income, but really where their cash flow goes on a month-to-month basis. And so we really focus on that. We help with loan packaging, whether we do it ourselves or we prepare them to go approach a bank. We want them to go see banks with a plan in place, so they're not just walking in. It gives them more legitimacy. It gives the banks more comfort in the client knowing what they're doing. Marketing, SEO, kind of website management. We can help with strategic planning about where you want to take your business, where you want to be in 3 years or 5 years. Buying a business is a big one that I didn't really anticipate that would be so big, but there's a lot of business purchase opportunities. And so someone will come to us and say, there's a business being offered to me at X amount. Is this the right deal? Is this, how am I valuing that? And so we break down the numbers with them. We go through everything, all the considerations in buying a business, and then we, give them our opinion based on what we've seen, whether, it's a good idea, it's a bad idea, what they need to work on, what they need to consider when buying a business. Real estate analysis, we do a lot of rent versus own analysis. So a business might be, kind of an early stage business, and they're considering either going into a lease, or maybe they've even got the resources to buy their own location. And so that decision is obviously a very important decision for the business. We go through kind of all the different scenarios in that and what it means to rent versus own. And then finally is connecting you with resources in the community. We're not attorneys, we're not accountants, and so we can't give legal advice for a number of reasons. But what we can do is we can connect with local businesses in the community. So when we have clients come to us and they need legal help, we can talk with local, businesses that are small business focused to help them with the needs that they have. Who can use Open to Business? It's any business that's opening in Washington County or any resident of Washington County. So if you're opening your business somewhere else but you live in Washington County, if you meet one of those two criteria, you can access the Open to Business program. There's no income, gender, race qualification. Basically, it's open to everyone in the county. We don't turn anyone away, except there's only one caveat, is that we don't lend to nonprofits. We do for-profit businesses. It's free and confidential. This is a free and confidential resource of the county. Washington County pays the annual flat fee for the program, and so the entrepreneur does not pay anything, and they can meet with us as many times as they want. We've had a number of clients that come with a specific problem. We solve it, we figure out kind of what they need to do, and then we don't see them again, which is fine. And then I've had clients that I've seen probably 15 to 20 times. We try to space out our meetings. We try to get an action plan going in place, so that when the next time we see them, we've made some progress, but there's no limit to how many times you can see us. So that's kind of the technical advisory side of what we do. The second side of what we do is that we're a lender. And so MCCD, we've got a $10 million loan fund, of which about $8 or $9 million is outstanding right now, and that's throughout the whole Twin Cities. That's not just Washington County. We get our funds from a number of sources. We have local bank investment. They have what's called CRA requirements, which basically means that they've got to invest in small businesses in the community. And instead of lending directly as a bank, what they'll do is they'll make an investment in a nonprofit such as MCCD to lend the money for them. And so we'll get kind of low interest loans from the bank, then we turn around and lend that money out. We also administer deed money, so for like emerging entrepreneur program, we'll deploy those funds on behalf of the state. And then also we have our own assets that we lend out. And so pooled all together, we have about a $10 million loan fund. And we lend out in 3 categories of lending. The first one is direct, the second one is participation, and the third is creative, which I'll get into right now. The first one is direct lending, and so these are kind of your startup lending. This is direct money that we lend to startup businesses without any real partnership with anyone else. It's directly coming from us. And what we do is we lend up to $25,000 for retail or service businesses that are startup businesses, and then up to $50,000 if it's a manufacturing business or there's a piece of collateral tied to the lending. It doesn't have to be 25. We've done loans that are small. We've done loans that are 5,000. We really just break down what the need is for the business to start. And 25,000 is just kind of a number that we've pegged as kind of like a number that, you know, someone's getting into a location. They've got to pay some prepaid rent. They've got to, you know, kind of, you know, get on their feet. And so what we'll do is we'll cap that at 25,000. We'll go through all the startup kind of budgeting with them. We'll make a plan. You know, if they've got to create an LLC, we'll help them with that. If they've got to do an assumed name, we'll help them with that. We'll get them linked up with good bookkeeping, you know, just everything, all the foundational needs that they need to start their business. And then if they're looking for that startup loan, we'll do that up to $25,000. We do ask them to have an equity investment in the project. I think that that's a misconception sometimes of a nonprofit, that we're, you know, just lending money without any kind of equity requirement or repayment terms or anything like that. We do charge interest. We are not a bank. We're what we call exception lenders, so it's a little bit more risky. So our terms would be for a startup maybe 9 or 10% for a startup loan, amortized out to whatever the lease might be, you know, 3 to 5 years or something like that. We do it that way because we don't want to compete with the local banks. We want to fill a need that the banks aren't interested in pursuing. So banks don't like doing what's called projection lending. And so it leaves this huge gap in the marketplace of all these entrepreneurs that have good ideas, that have the experience to do what they want to do, but they have no access to lending. And so what we're doing is we're making that loan fund available to small businesses in Washington County. And also who we are competing against are kind of credit cards and online, you know, loans that you can go on and get easy, you know, kind of easy approval for, but end up charging you 25, 30%, and you don't really understand what you're getting into. We've seen that a number of times where someone's got a really good idea for a business. It's selling their good or service really isn't the issue. It's just the financing that's really crippling them as they grow and expand. And so what we try to do is not only provide the financing, but the education of what that means and what the repayment schedule means and how to budget so their cash flow makes sense. The second part of lending we do is participation lending. So we do partner with banks. And so what we do, typically what this entails is we partner with banks, credit unions, other community development lenders. When a bank has a client that's kind of a second stage business that's ready to move up and, you know, perhaps buy some real estate or buy a piece of equipment or something like that, they've got their own lending standards. And so, for example, for a piece of real estate, they might be able to lend 75 or 80% on a piece of real estate and some equipment or something like that. Where we come in, we fill a gap and we say, okay, that leaves a lot of money that the entrepreneur is going to need to come up with to make that project work. So, for example, if you're buying a $500,000 building, the bank says we'll do 75% of that. That leaves $150,000 that the entrepreneur needs to come up with. Sometimes that's okay, that's not a problem. More often than not, that capital is really needed for working capital. As you're expanding that business, you're going through changes, your cash flow is kind of going up and down. So what we're doing is we're filling that gap so you can retain that working capital and you can go about expanding your business. The banks hopefully enjoy that part of what we do because we're always in a subordinated position with them in terms of repayment and collateral. So that just means if the deal goes bad, they get paid back first, we get paid back second. Our maximum loan amount is 5% of whatever our collective outstanding balances are as MCCD. And so that's like, around 8 million. So, conservatively, it's about 350,000 for our maximum loan amount. And we rarely go up to that amount. And it doesn't seem like a huge amount if you've been working with banks before, but 350,000, if we're 5% of a deal, that's a $7 million deal. And so what you'll see in some of the numbers I'll go through later on how we've been lending in the community is that we have kind of a smaller portion of what we lend, but it opens up more investment in the community. And then finally, we do creative financing. So a lot of the businesses we work with have kind of uneven repayment schedules, especially being in Minnesota where you've got seasonality. So you've got businesses, maybe like a landscaping company that has all this business going on in the summer and in the winter. They don't have any cash flow coming in. So what we do is we try to best prepare for that, but we understand that sometimes you need to be creative in your repayment. So what we do is we really take it on a one-on-one basis and say, okay, here's the repayment schedule, here's what we're going to do, and we really work with the client. We just want to, kind of the last bullet is kind of sums it up. We want to build on a structure that fits with the entrepreneur. So we don't really have any sort of box that we need to be in. So aside from that, I just kind of wanted to go into some of the challenges that I've been seeing in the 2.5 years that we've been running the Open to Business program here in Washington County. The first one is what we call the knowledge or the resource gap. The knowledge gap is just, is the entrepreneur ready to open a business? Do they have the experience needed? A lot of people that have come to access the Open to Business program have had really good ideas, but just not really the experience either in business ownership or the specific industry they're in. One example I'll use is the restaurant industry. A lot of people will come in and say, I want to start a restaurant, that don't really have the experience needed. That's probably just the most common one. So that's what we would call the knowledge gap. And so in that situation, we would encourage them to get experience one way or another, to either work in a restaurant or work in a service industry before they jump in and do that, unless they've got someone on the management team that knows how to do that. And then a resource gap is that if you've got the knowledge and you've got the experience, but you just don't have the resources, the financial resources, the accounting, the legal resources, we try to fill those gaps, whether it's a knowledge gap or a resource gap. The next one is just cash flow management and undercapitalization. One of the biggest reasons businesses fail are, again, not necessarily because it's a bad idea or they don't, can't sell their good or service. It's because they run out of time in their ramp-up period, where they're ramping up sales in their first year or two. Businesses really kind of struggle in their first year, where it's, the training wheels are off, and so the cash flow goes up and down, and sometimes they just run out of money. And so what we do is when we budget with our clients, we try to stem that and say, okay, you're going to have a ramp-up period for 9 months, 9 months, and so you're going to need this much of working capital during that ramp-up period. And so just getting them to understand that kind of cash flow. Having a unique product or service is a big one too. A lot of people come to us and they want to do the same thing that someone down the street is doing, and so you really have to have something that's new or in a market that's not being served. But if you open something that's doing something that the person down the street that's been doing it for 10 years is doing, you better have something that's differentiating you, or else it's just going to be a struggle. Changes in technology, if you're not changing, you're going to be left behind, and the way that you market is different than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Up until this point, you pretty much put an ad in the newspaper, maybe a commercial or something like that. It's now all online, it's all social media, it's SEO, it's getting your website to come up first. So we work with them to get all those things in place. Talent retention, low unemployment is great, but a lot of the businesses I've worked with have a hard time keeping employees, good employees, because they're jumping ship and going to better opportunities. Then you have to start over and you have to train again. And so talent retention is a big thing. And then high occupancy costs. Rent is really high. Either buying or renting, it's really high right now. And so when you look at kind of like a business's revenues versus expenses, one of your big expenses is your wages, but the other one is your occupancy costs. What are you paying for rent? A lot of times people will the landlords will hand you a lease, and people don't negotiate that. When someone gives you a lease, that's the opening kind of negotiation. And so try to, tell people that you can negotiate anything you want. You've got to do what works for your cash flow. And if it doesn't work, then you maybe need to move on to another opportunity, which is a tough conversation to have because, when you see a location that you like, you really want to make it work, but it's got to work for the numbers. And so those are kind of, there are many more, but these are kind of big, kind of recurring themes that I've seen throughout the county. So the Washington County activity, what I've seen, since July of 2017 when the program started, I've met with over 250 entrepreneurs in Washington County. As you can see, almost all of them were small businesses, kind of under 10 employees. Half of them, a little over half of them were in the pre-start planning and startup, and then a little less than half of them are existing businesses that had some sort of challenge, maybe adding employees, maybe had some questions about sales tax or something like that. And then on the loan side, in the 2.5 years, we've approved 24 loans in the county with direct lending from MCCD of $1.3 million, which has leveraged $10.3 million in total investment. And so as you can see, it's 10% of the total investment in these financing arrangements that we've been involved in. Of the 24 loans, it's been about 50-50 between those startup loans, which is, kind of the $25,000, $20,000, kind of startup loans, and then 50% have been kind of the bank participations. So working with local lenders to put together financing packages for businesses that are growing. Forest Lake, I've had 37 client engagements in Forest Lake since 2017 when we started. We've approved and funded 2 loans totaling $75,000, leveraging $960,000 in total investment. And so Forest Lake kind of mirrors the other parts of Washington County where one of those loans was for a startup company that was starting just a new business, and that was a $25,000 startup loan. And then the other one was a bank loan where the bank was involved, the SBA was involved, and then we were involved as well. And so we put that financing package together and approved that. The business types that we've been working with, you can see service industry has kind of been the number one, with retail and that restaurant and food business kind of right behind, manufacturing, professional, construction, and other. So other would be maybe like health related, like yoga studio or like, martial arts or something like that. And then a lot of the questions that we get about how you get started with Open to Business is you just simply call us, get on our website, call me or email me to set up an initial appointment. And my email address is here. I put pamphlets kind of on your counter there. I've got business cards. Really what you do typically is we maybe have an initial conversation, and then we set up a time to meet. And so what we do in that first meeting is I just kind of get to know who the entrepreneur is, what their history is. I try to get their background and why they want to do what they're doing. And then as the meeting will go on, we'll kind of narrow in on kind of what they're trying to do, what their problem is, and narrow down to the question of what can I do for you, and then we create kind of a list of things that we want to get done. We create a timeline, and then sometimes that timeline's a week, and sometimes the timeline's a month. And then we set up a second meeting, hopefully, and we talk about kind of what progress was made, and then we go from there, and we just kind of keep moving the ball forward. And then at some point, those meetings probably will become less as time goes on, as they get up and going. But again, some people like to meet every couple weeks. It just kind of depends on the entrepreneur. We'll never, just say, no, we can't meet. I'm located in the Washington County CDA building in Woodbury. So that's where my main office is, in the Washington County CDA building. I have many of my meetings there, but understanding that a lot of these business owners don't have, time to just pop down to Woodbury. It's a very long county. I can meet kind of wherever they are. Come meet you at your business, come meet you at a coffee shop. It's kind of my second office, coffee shops. And in addition to that, we have city office hours in a lot of the cities in Washington County. So here in Forest Lake, I meet every second and fourth Tuesday morning of the month. I'm upstairs, so I'll have my big Open to Business sign. You can drop in. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll have, people I'll schedule meetings for when I'm up in town. I'll say, hey, I'll be up in Forest Lake and in a couple of days, why don't you meet during my office hours? And so I do that for Cottage Grove as well and in Hugo, and then, just kind of all over the place. And just kind of to wrap up, and this is something that Chris kind of hammers home a lot. There's about 18,000 one-person businesses in Washington County. And so we just want to make sure that they've got the resources that they need to grow. That way, if they add an employee, a couple of employees, we could have real, solid small business groundwork here in the county. And so that's what we're doing. We think there's a lot of good reasons to keep your business in Washington County. And so we're trying to, say that, instead of living here and going and commuting and going and working somewhere else, why don't you open your business here? Because we really think that it's the future. So with that, I'll open it up to questions or comments or anything that you have.
Thank you.
Yes.
Questions for Tyler? Absolutely, jump in.
So you talked about helping people that want to buy a business. Do you help on the sell side then as well? If there's somebody that's wanting to get ready to sell their business?
Yes.
Work with them? Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
definitely. We don't see that quite as much. It's usually on the buy side, but if you're selling, typically someone will hire a business broker for that, for kind of the listing and everything like that. But we'll sit and we'll talk about valuation and, kind of, okay, what are your assets? What's your revenue stream? How are we going to look at this in a valuation? Who's your audience? Where do you want to market it? That kind of thing.
What about that referral list of professionals, like bookkeepers or whatever? How do they get vetted and added?
Well, it's just a lot of networking on my part, going and meeting the chambers and going in and being kind of active in the cities and going and just meeting people. There's no preferred list or anything like that. We don't have like marketing agreements with anyone. We don't have any of that. What we want is we just want someone that's really small business focused and locally focused to be able to help businesses that can be responsive to small businesses. And so one thing I should also mention too is we've got resources within Open to Business. So I'm one of 8 business advisors and my background is in banking. We have kind of a wide variety of backgrounds. And so we might match someone else up with another business advisor if they need specific help. For example, we've got a bookkeeper that runs QuickBooks, and she will offer up to 20 hours of free QuickBooks training and administration that we can put people in touch with. And so that's a free program that's usually about $100 an hour on the open market. And then, we've got other resources like the University of Minnesota has a law clinic for their third-year law students. That we can link people up with to get some free legal advice too. And so yeah, to answer your original question, we just meet people in the community really. And so I'll go, meet at their business and, talk to them at events and let them know who we are. And if it seems like a good fit, then we'll make that connection. A lot of that is geographically based too, so I don't want someone from Forest Lake to have to go down to, Cottage Grove to go see someone, so trying to meet someone and meet a good network in every city.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's good to see the numbers of activity in Forest Lake. Would you say Forest Lake compared to the rest of the county, are we underutilized, average utilization, over?
I would say average.
Average, okay.
Yeah, so it's hard to break up geographically. I would say that Woodbury, Cottage Grove is kind of an area that gets about 25%. Stillwater itself gets about 25-30%. Forest Lake Hugo gets about 25%, and then kind of the rest of the county gets 20%. Stillwater is the #1 city, and I would say that's probably because they've got a lot of really kind of small retail businesses on that main strip. Population, they've got a strong chamber, and so so I get a lot of calls from Stillwater, but Forest Lake is definitely strong strong chamber here as well. And again, it's probably about 25% or so in the Forest Lake Hugo area. So, it can always be better. We're always trying to market and we're always trying to get out. But, I wouldn't say that it's like behind or ahead any other region.
Perfect. Other questions?
So you guys you said business advisors?
Yes.
So how many, in the county alone, how many of those would you have access to? you said there's 7 or 8 or so?
Yeah,
or-
so my territory is Washington County, so
Yeah.
I'm the only one here in Washington County. And so your direct contact would be with me. And so that would be the relationship. So even if I referred you to go get bookkeeping help from my colleague in Scott County, that would just be kind of a side part of our relationship. So now if the entrepreneur crossed county lines between where they live and where their business is, we would link you up with the person that's best suited to help you. So if someone was looking for financing, that would be me. But if someone went over to Anoka and they had, different set of variables they were looking for, it might be them. And so we take a lot of factors into account. But
And so regardless of the county, the programs run pretty much identical, depending, or does it vary based on the county or maybe the county participation, how much money's put in? Does that vary at all?
No. I mean, we have contracts with each of the counties. And so the business advisors that are assigned to each county have the same job description and the same duties. And to the extent that they can't help or they don't have the expertise in someone else and someone other county does, we collaborate a lot. We see each other, every week or two. We're confidential again. We don't, advertise who we're working with, but within MCCD, we do a lot of collaboration. For example, we have someone in Minneapolis that has probably worked with opening or helping hundreds of restaurants. She knows everything there is to know about opening a restaurant. So whenever I get a restaurant client, I go to her and I say, here's my client, here's what I think we need to do, here's what would you, given what I've told you, what are the top things that you would look at, So there's a collaborative effort there, but ultimately it's my client.
And what is, on the loan part of things, what's the default rate? Is it fairly low?
No, it's, the default rate is low. So we're running, I'd have to check the numbers, but the last numbers that I got we are 97%,
Great.
which is good. I mean, we try to be what we call exception lenders, meaning we try to do deals that maybe the banks wouldn't do. Now that we always underwrite that it's going to work, but we understand some of our deals get to us for a reason, that traditional financing didn't work. So we looked at those numbers and said 97%, are we being risky enough? So we're in that good space right now where we think that we are being risky enough. We're not being too risky, but we're getting pretty good repayment. And then unlike banks as well, we work with the client too. So if a client is having cash flow issues, we won't necessarily automatically call a loan. We'll work with the client to maybe defer a payment or, set a new repayment schedule. So very easy to work with, no prepayment penalty if you want to pay us off early, that kind of thing. So it's worked fairly well. We've got a great loan admin team that's been doing it for 30 years, and so they're wonderful to work with.
You just answered my question.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Well, how flexible these loans are as far as, working with people that may be struggling along the way and that kind of thing.
So
But you answered it, so.
When someone's struggling like that, it's not like we just say, okay, we're going to modify the loan. It would be a moment of re-engaging the relation or further engaging the relationship to see what's going on and how can we fix it.
Typically, what's the duration of these loans?
So for a startup loan, it's typically 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
And so it's a $25,000 loan for 5 years. That's a repayment of about $500 a month, based on the interest rates that we offer. We match up with the lease term. So if someone is getting into a lease, we typically don't go shorter than what the lease term is or longer. So I'm working with someone right now that's about to sign a 5-year lease. So we won't offer them a 7-year loan. It'll just be with that lease.
If that loan was taken out today, what would the interest be?
If it's a startup loan, typically 9 or 10%.
Okay.
And so if we're working in partnership with a bank, a lot of factors go into it, but typically if a bank is at X%, will be maybe X plus 1%. So banks at 5% will come in at 6, or 6 will come in at 7.
Okay.
And that's just because of the added risk profile of what we're doing. It's the same project. I try to tell the banks all the time that we're not underwriting the same deal. You're getting,
Yeah,
you're
second-
covered more than we are.
Yeah, you're
It's-
second in line.
Yep.
That's the way it is. So.
Yep, exactly. And
Actually,
so,
you're third. I think the government's first.
yeah, and with the SBA, we're third in line.
Yeah.
The only people that we're ahead of is sometimes when it's a business sale, the seller will do some seller financing, and we'll be ahead of the seller in seller financing, obviously. But any other kind of government or private lender will be behind.
That's all I had. So, thanks.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
As part of what the EDA is working on, revitalizing downtown, bringing new shops in, smaller stores, do you have numbers that you could sit down, say if somebody wanted to open a small bookshop, if they sat down with you, could you look at the feasibility of that succeeding, what the demand would be, how much it would take for them to, how many customers in the door?
Yeah.
Is that something you can help early on?
That's a lot of what we do. And so what we'll do in that situation is we'll create kind of a startup budget of, not to get too far in the weeds, but what your one-time expenses will be as a startup, your startup inventory, equipment, things like that. And then what we call the variable expenses, or your kind of ongoing operating expenses, which would be your rent, your insurance, your, everything that you're going to pay every single month going forward. And so we think that we can get to a good number of your total operating expenses. And so that'll be the cash out in your cash flow model. And so then what we need to do is figure out what you need in the cash in portion of that, what you're selling, how much of it you're going to sell at what gross margin to meet that and exceed that for your cash. And so we'll really get down in the weeds and say, okay, if you're selling books and you're selling them at $10 a piece and you're using $7 to buy each book, you're getting $3. How many $3, transactions will you need to make rent and to make your insurance payment and to make everything like that and have a little left over?
Okay, then this question is really reaching, but thinking about other possibilities. If a group of maybe 3 or 4 different businesses wanted to share the same space,
Yeah.
like a retail space, maybe a little art gallery, bookstore and jewelry store, or whatever, can you deal with multiple entities?
That's a really good question. And I'll take that example and I'll put it in another way too. I've had people come to me selling their business and then get a phone call saying, hey, I've got an opportunity to buy a business, and it turns out to be the same business. And so we don't necessarily help with the actual negotiation on the buy or sell, but what we'll do in that situation, if there's a conflict, we will let all parties know, hey, I'm working with the other side of the transaction, or in your example, I'm working with someone else that's looking for this exact same space. Put it out on the table, and then if there is a conflict and we are moving forward with whatever there is to move forward with, sometimes we might bring another open to business advisor to come in and represent one of those parties, just so we're not, even if it's subconscious that we hear numbers or we hear something that maybe would be something that would be beneficial to the other party that you don't, it just gets so murky that we try to completely, stay out of any sort of conflict like that. So if that happens, our thing is transparency from the get-go, and then how's the best way to handle it? Sometimes I'll be working with someone working on a transaction that I worked with someone a year ago on. And so I'll reach out to someone I worked a year ago and ask them, are you okay with this? I'm helping them out. And they'll say, yeah, that's fine. Or if they say it's not fine, then we'll bring in another advisor. But we'll get everyone the support and assistance that they need, but it might come from someone from another county. And that's pretty rare, I would say. I mean, it happens, but not too often. But it does happen. Go ahead.
Do you ever put on any seminars or classes for, like, partnering up with a chamber or an EDA that then would present for the public could come in?
Yeah, we're working on that a lot. We're doing different forms of that right now. So I'm doing one on marketing coming up here at a local credit union. We're starting to do in other counties, and I've done kind of forms of this throughout this county, of just kind of the basic ABCs of running a business, kind of high level, half hour, 45 minutes with Q&A of just, here are the things you need to think about. We're not going to get too deep into it, but here are the things that you need to think about. We're starting one in some of the Hennepin County areas of kind of the 5 questions you need to answer as a new business owner. So I'll be delivering that probably in the next, coming months in, local libraries. And I've spoken in front of the chambers plenty of times, a lot of it, just kind of introducing the program, but then kind of taking the next step of just education throughout the county. And so it's really what the need is. I mean, we've seen that the need is just kind of the ABCs of running a business, but then we want to have some other, kind of themed kind of presentations too that everyone as a business owner will go through. And a lot of that is marketing, a lot of that is financing, and kind of just the startup issues. We try not to narrow down too much so the audience doesn't come, but we don't want to be, too broad where we're not really teaching them anything.
And then business retention, is that a focus as well? I mean, you talk about these small businesses struggling with online and all that information like that, SEO and things are just huge right now because as we don't know, it's changing so quickly, to try to keep up on it is tough. So I think that would be a huge market as well.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's a lot of businesses are doing kind of the same marketing that they've done over the last 15, 20 years. And so what I'll do is I'll ask them, do you have any data that supports that this particular marketing is working or not? And how do you get that data? And it's kind of opportunity cost of your marketing budget. If you're spending $200 on this and you're not really seeing much of a return, could you perhaps maybe put it over here and get more of an audience? It really just depends where your audience is, who you're selling to. I try to put the entrepreneur in the seat of the consumer and say, if you were looking for your product or service, how would you go about it? And it's pretty much a lot of the same. It depends on how old your client is, a lot of different factors. But a lot of things are similar in that you're finding them online now. So which outlet online? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it Google Plus? All these different kind of factors. And so we kind of get a multi-pronged attack on it. There's a lot of really inexpensive ways to market right now, but if you've got a small budget, you really need to be getting that return and seeing it, or else you're just kind of throwing the money away.
Any other questions? Great. So I'll ask you a question.
Yep.
So much of what you're doing is exactly aligned with the goals of our EDA. What can we do to help? What's your ask of us?
Exposure, really. I mean, we don't have a huge marketing budget. It's a lot of going in front of people. The CDA has been a tremendous partner with helping us, getting us exposed to the community and everything. But it's a constant. It's a constant. You can't, you've got to be in front of people all the time. You got to be top of mind. I've met with many banks 2-3 times, and third time they're like, oh yeah, forgot about that. So really just, that's pretty much the big one is the, if you see anyone, just let them know that we're a resource, because really everyone pays for it. It's a county program, and so everyone should have access to it. And so we're hopefully very diligent about making sure that every corner of the county sees us. And so a lot of that is dependent on our partners. And so if there's anything, that would be great. And if there's anything, you think that I should know, if if you're going through anything in the EDA that could benefit a small business, or anything that I could partner with you with, just letting each other know, and hopefully that would be vice versa.
Well, reevaluating programs, and certainly as we're some of those incentives and as those are changing, certainly opportunity for communication and make sure that you understand what from a city perspective we're offering.
Great.
So, yeah, good opportunity. Anything else? Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for the information, and this is a great program.
Thank you.
We're lucky to have you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, next item on our agenda is the Washington County CDA grant application and resolution. Dan, I believe you're going to tee this up.
Yep, President, members of the EDA, I'll tee up the updated Washington County CDA grant application for downtown planning. But before I go into that, I just want to give a thank you to Commissioner Miron and the CDA board for their support of the pre-development fund. This fund has been extremely helpful for the city of Forest Lake to really kind of help start our planning process for economic development here within the city. And I think if you actually look at the EDA's work plan, a lot of what we've been able to accomplish in the past 18 months has been a direct result of this plan. So it's been extremely helpful for us. So just a thank you for the support of that. Tonight's application, it's kind of an evolution of the one that was approved back in January. I'm not going to go through kind of the sewer capacity component that I kind of went through a lot in the last approval. But when we got that approved and we're going to submit that, we started looking at that application in light of the rest of the downtown planning. And instead of submitting two separate applications, we decided to combine those into one, since there's a lot of hand in glove between the sewer study and the downtown planning. So what's in the packet tonight is kind of that blend of it's a combination of the downtown master plan as well as the sewer capacity modeling. One thing I do want to just kind of bring your attention to is if you go to Exhibit A in your packet, you'll see an updated kind of study map. I'll pull it up here in just one second here. The reason why this map was updated was, if you recall, of course it's not working, one second. If you recall in the last meeting that we had, we kind of talked about we're kind of looking at what we're going to establish for the downtown committee and where we're going to draw those that membership from. And we started to kind of see the scope or kind of that scale of where the existing downtown area, it started to kind of expand out. It started going further south on 61, started going further north on 61, a little bit down Broadway as well. And then also realizing whatever we do in the downtown core is going to have implications kind of throughout the entire city of Forest Lake. So to try to capture a little bit broader area, kind of develop this sort of two-zone model for the study area. The red area is that existing downtown core. That's the original area that we discussed as the primary downtown core back when we looked at what study area geographically are we going to do. But then broaden that out into the blue area that's on the map. Kind of looked at combining these two into one bigger study area. But when you actually look at these two areas, there are differences in terms of how they look and feel. The downtown core still has that more active use, that pedestrian use that the Humphrey Institute identified. The blue area is a little bit more pedestrian or automobile focused, but wanted to kind of expand that study area out just a little bit to kind of capture that latest sort of iteration of what came out of the last planning session there. So the study area that we're going to be proposing with the planners has been expanded slightly to kind of reflect that larger area. This also is along the lines of the recommendation of what the Humphrey Institute gave, where you kind of look at that area right along I-35, that highway business district, driving traffic to downtown. This is just sort of a little bit smaller version of that. So the final piece of this too is that this whole area matches up with future land use in the 2040 comp plan. So this is in line with where the 2040 comp plan has the business district, that's the downtown. It is expanded pretty significantly north and south. So there's some continuity between all three applications there. Going back, Exhibit A of the application kind of dives into the scope of work for the downtown plan. Where this came from was I reached out, reviewed a bunch of RFPs for downtown planning, other communities that have gone through this process, asked them for their RFPs and sort of kind of tailored those existing RFPs to what we've discussed. So you start to see that outreach or that kind of outline for what the downtown plan is going to look like once the planner gets it and develops the document. I think one of the key points that, when we meet with the planners is to really hammer home is that community outreach piece of it, making sure that they deliver a community outreach plan that ensures that from basically day one that we're engaging that local business community. We don't want this to develop in a vacuum. We want to make sure that this plan happens with the local business community, that, having input, having them be aware of the plan. A couple of things is that we look at a phase one of this is having them review existing studies One of the reasons for that is we don't want them to basically mirror a study that was done. We'd rather have them build on existing studies. So that's why for that phase one, they review all the existing studies. Also included in the phase one is a walking tour of downtown with the downtown group. I think we spent a lot of time looking at maps, looking at this sort of in a two-dimensional 20,000 view, but getting actually down on the ground on 61, walking our downtown helps to kind of really bring these plans to life. So that's one of the first elements in the phase one as well. And then I also put in there a parking study that has been discussed, off and on for a number of years. So actually getting some parking information will be beneficial in developing a good downtown plan. And then they'll take all that information and start to develop some concept uses for downtown. Want them to really be cognizant of the fact that there's residential use down there, there's commercial use down there, and there's a lot of public land in that area. So trying to figure out how does all that work together and develop a couple of scenarios for how can that redevelop. But this is where we also want to bake that off of the sewer study, where we want to match those up. We want to make sure that that residential model, for example, is able to be done with our current infrastructure capacity. So if at the end of our modeling for the sewer study says that we can only put in an additional 100 units of residential downtown, but the plan calls for 200, we need them to adjust that plan so it's realistic on the infrastructure there. So there is that component of market reality when they develop their plan. And also a key component here is also taking this plan, and before it's finalized, we'll take it out to market. We want the market to review that plan when it's 75% complete, 80% complete. So again, we're developing a plan that has the ability to actually be implemented in the market. A couple of options are there. One is a lot of these groups have their own developers that they'll bring in and bounce the plan off of. I've also talked to the ULI, Urban Land Institute, for the technical assistance panel and asked them to provide an estimate for us to use them as the subject matter experts to really test this against the market. They've done that for other communities and will allow us then to make any kind of final adjustments before that final plan is brought forward for consideration. And then it's not in here, but once the plan is done and approved, work on an implementation plan. So not just develop the plan, stick it on the shelf, but making sure that we implement that plan moving forward. So what's before you tonight is that updated application, kind of encompasses all of that. There's two asks tonight of the EDA. The first ask would be to approve the application, and the second ask would be to approve the resolution that's included in your packet, which is, I believe, 02-10-20-01, which is the resolution of support for the application. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the application of the process today.
Questions for Dan? Just a reminder, this is step 2 of a multi-step application, so we've had a fair amount of discussion to get us to this point. Any items of clarification before we approve the grant application and the resolution of support? Any questions?
This is something we've been talking about for quite some time, so I don't see any changes that we want to make on it. So therefore, I'd make a motion that we apply for the Washington County CDA Redevelopment Finance Fund grant.
I second it.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, just a quick note of thanks again to Washington County for making these funds available. We've appreciated the partnership, and these are certainly important items of study related to better understanding barriers to downtown development, so we appreciate it. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. And then step 2 for tonight is the approval of the resolution of support, which is that resolution 21020-01. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam Mayor, I'd make a motion that we adopt resolution 02-10-20-01, resolution approving the application for funding from Washington County CDA Pre-Development Finance Fund.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And Chris, anything further from a Washington County update?
Thank you,
Washington
President
County
Bain,
night
members.
tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, I just have a couple of quick things, and then I'll ask Commissioner Miron as well if he wants to add anything. But I did want to thank Commissioner Miron, who serves on the CDA board and is also the county board chair. And honestly, I feel like I owe a lot to Commissioner Miron, because these programs that we're talking about tonight, the Open to Business program and the Pre-Development Finance Fund, could not have happened without the support of the county board. So thank you for your support and ongoing continued support for small businesses and communities here in the county. So just a couple of quick things. On Wednesday this week at 7:30 a.m., we're going to be co-sponsoring the Chamber Breakfast, and Commissioner Miron will be part of a panel with Don Thiessen from Public Works at Washington County and Sheila Holbrook-White, who's going to be talking a little bit about some mobility, some pretty exciting mobility opportunities that are coming forward in the northern part of the county. So I'd encourage you to look at the Chamber website, and I don't think it's too late to register, but 7:30 on Wednesday morning, if you're able to join us, it would be a really good conversation. And then one other additional change, this is more of a transitional change in our agency. The Washington County CDA is going through a transition right now. Barbara Dacey, who is our outgoing executive director, today was her last day, and she's accepted another position. And Melissa Taphorn, who is the deputy director for the Washington County CDA, is taking over for Barbara, and that'll become official next Tuesday, the same day that your application comes before the CDA board for consideration for the downtown redevelopment study. And with that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Aaron if he wants to add any final thoughts.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. One other item, on the 28th of January, Molly O'Rourke, our county administrator, retired. And a similar procedure, but the county negotiated a contract with our deputy administrator to serve as county administrator. So Kevin Corbett took over that position and hit the ground running and has been doing a good job. So I'm pleased this evening to see Chris sitting at the bottom of the dais here. When we brought Chris on board, our intent was that he would be an extension of your staff, and I'm hoping that that's the way it is working here. He's been a tremendous asset, along with Tyler, on our efforts really to encourage economic development within Washington County, so we're very pleased with that. I will draw your attention to one other item, and tomorrow at our county board meeting, we have a public hearing. The county board is discussing or proposing a potential quarter-cent increase in the sales tax in Washington County to fund roads and bridges. I think the county board believes that that quarter cent could provide added funding for development of our roads and bridges within the county, development repair, really, quite frankly, of our roads and bridges within the county, and ultimately provide property tax relief. Because the bonding that we're currently using to fund road projects requires interest payments, and the bonds and interest are paid off with property taxes. And so the sales tax provides a good opportunity to either expand our opportunity to continue to do those projects or reduce the property tax necessary to fund those. And it likely will be a combination, but we do have that public hearing beginning tomorrow at our 9 o'clock meeting. We want to make sure that we allow for adequate public input to this. This is a major decision for the county board. And so we've allowed an extension of that public hearing to continue to the 17th of March is what the schedule is. And it's unusual for the county board to meet in the evening, but we are scheduling an evening meeting for the 17th of March to allow people who otherwise couldn't attend a 9 o'clock board meeting on a Tuesday morning to attend a 6 o'clock board meeting on a Tuesday evening. And then that public hearing will be continued again until the 24th of March, at which time I think the county board will have some additional discussion and have the opportunity to make a decision on it. So We're keeping this open from the 11th of February until the 24th of March to allow for adequate input. And I'm hoping, quite frankly, that we will maybe see some coverage on this issue in the press, allow people to, review, make comment, and that type of thing, so that the county board makes a very transparent and I think, positive decision on this issue. So we're anxious to have that public comment. It will begin tomorrow with the presentation from our county engineer, Wayne Sandberg, at our county board meeting, and I will ask staff that that presentation be placed on our website. There's some good information in that presentation. I've already reviewed it, and good information as to the amount of money we're talking. We have to identify specific projects, and we would look at those projects every 3 to 5 years. We have to have projects in the queue in order for us to legally implement that quarter-cent sales tax. So that would put us in line with most of the counties around. Dakota County and Anoka County are not at that level yet of sales tax, but it otherwise puts us, competitive with the sales tax, but allows us to utilize that for roads and bridges. There's currently a quarter-cent sales tax that's levied, and that has been levied since 2008 as part of our membership in the County Transit Improvement Board. That was dissolved during my time on the county board. I actually served on CTIB for a period of time. CTIB was dissolved. That money, it now comes directly to Washington County for transit. But this is an expansion of that, would be dedicated fully to transportation, not transit.
I was just going to ask that, specifically roads and bridges, not public transit.
The quarter-cent, the initial quarter-cent that, is levied for transit is planned to remain in place, so to fund the transit projects. But that money now is coming, directly to Washington County as opposed to the County Transit Improvement Board, which is part of the major controversy that occurred back, I believe it was in 08 when that was initiated, but 06 or 08, something like that. So, there was a lot of discussion at that time that we were contributing to a broader pool of money that Washington County would not benefit from. And so, that tax, the public hearing now is coming up. We certainly encourage comments. If people don't feel comfortable coming to a meeting or aren't able to, they can certainly submit written comments, and I will make sure that they get entered into the public record. They could email me directly or email our staff, and we'll make sure any of those comments get implemented into the public record. So.
Fran, do you have an idea what that annual budget would be, what it would equate to?
I do, and I don't have it in front of me, Commissioner, and I'd be reluctant to share that right now, but that's why I think that information, it would be important to have it on the website. I actually have it in my folder, but I can share that with you afterwards. But
is that just and strictly for county roads and bridges? It wouldn't be any aid to a city type situation?
No, just county roads and bridges, so, within our system.
As far in your project planning to identify specific forest-like based projects, or is that still to be determined?
No, we do have some. Let me go back and grab my paperwork here. I had it electronically and actually printed it today just so I could have it in paper form to, and this actually is the presentation that's coming tomorrow to us. So the sales tax as proposed would generate $20 million annually. We did some comparisons with gas tax. I know the legislature has talked a lot about gas tax, and, you know, and that's been a controversial issue over the last few legislative sessions, but a penny increase would generate 33 million statewide, a penny increase in the gas tax, and of that 33 million, Washington County would receive 180,000. So you can see the impact that we have with the quarter-cent sales tax, and that would all go to Washington County for capital projects. We had some comparison of options with respect to bonding. I mentioned about bonding, and I think those are some interesting numbers to look at. So the sales tax in Washington County, the current base tax is 6.875. With the county transportation sales and use, it would at 0.25%. That would bring the total tax to 7.125%. And with that is with the quarter-cent tax used for transit. With the 0.5%, then the total would be 7.375%. So it would move from what it currently is at 7.125% to 7.375%. Anoka County, Dakota County are both at 7.125%. Ramsey County is currently at 7.375%. City of St. Paul is at 7.875%. Hennepin County is at 7.525%. Minneapolis is at 8.025%. Scott County is at 7.375%. Carver County is at 7.375%. And with the proposal, Washington County would be at that 7.375%. Let's see. We have to update eligible project lists for Department of Revenue on a regular ongoing basis of every 3 to 5 years. The annual budget and capital improvement plan would be created to prioritize project and allocate revenue. Principles for the sales, use, and excise tax revenue would provide funding for projects that improve safety, increase capacity, align with long-term planning, promote economic development, reduce reliance on county general obligation bonding for road and bridge projects, and bond debt paid with property taxes. So there's the savings that I'm talking about. Summary of expected revenues here, Commissioner. I have that. From October through December of 2017, the total received was $2.4 million because that was a partial year. From January through December of 2018, the total received was $10.2 million. From January through December of 19, it's estimated, because we don't have those final figures in yet, but we expect it to be at $10.7 million. And then January through December of 2020, assuming a 2% growth over 2019, and also assuming that the 0.5% tax is implemented at 7/1 of 20, so we have to give notice to the Department of Revenue, we would anticipate $16.1 million. As far as projects go, proposed projects that we have before us right now would be County Road 15 from County Road 5 to Trunk Highway 36, County Road 50 from Trunk Highway 61 to County Road 15, County Road 57, so County Road 7 to County Road 4, County Road 65 from County Road 10 to County Road 14, County Road 13 from County Road 6 to County Road 14, CASA 15 from CASA 7 to Lynch Road, CASA 15 from 62nd Street, CASA 15 from CASA 10 to CASA 14, CASA 15 from Trunk Highway 36, CASA 19 from Indian Street, CASA 24 from Oren to 59th Street, CASA 18 from CASA 13 to Wood Lane Drive, and CASA 3 from 170th to 240th. So those are the projects that staff is putting before us right now. And as I said, those would be reviewed, regularly. And I would encourage the city and the EDA, if there are projects that, need to be reviewed, that we be notified and we could have an opportunity to look at those projects as well. As we look at the various means that the county is now utilizing to support economic development, in the past, really, the county had very limited support for economic development, and I think the main focus was trying to provide good roads and bridges that would encourage economic development. But if you look back at counties' letters or of support or lack of support for tax increment financing, some of the other tools, we've changed significantly in our approach on those issues, trying to support cities in their efforts to create economic development, to maintain jobs and opportunities for people within our communities. And we're going way beyond what we did in the past with respect to just maintaining roads and bridges. And now I would suggest we're making an attempt to even move harder on the road and bridge issue as well. So we encourage the public input. I'm anxious to see, what we have for public comment tomorrow. But I think more importantly, we've extended this public hearing out extensively to allow for the message to get out and for people to let us know what they think about this as a funding proposal for roads and bridges. So, Madam Chair, that's all I have, unless there's questions from the commissioners.
Anything else? Thank you so much for being here. Very thorough update. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Final item on our agenda this evening is a Chamber of Commerce update. Member Lorge, anything
We
that we
look
haven't?
forward to the Wednesday breakfast at Vanelli's. The deadline for registering was last Friday, but if you want to go, call the chamber office right away tomorrow, and Vanelli's is very accommodating. And then Saturday, March 28th is the expo, so get your booth space reserved. That's it.
Thank you so much. That being the final item on our agenda this evening, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And we're adjourned.